Hello, it's good to see you again. I'm glad you can join me for another study in the book of Proverbs. We're going to be in Proverbs chapter 10. Chapter 10 is a transition. It's starting a different style of writing in the book of Proverbs. You know, one of the great things about Proverbs, and it might sound a little strange here, but the great thing about Proverbs is you don't need me to study Proverbs. And that's a great thing. You don't need anybody really to explain Proverbs to you. Most of them are pretty obvious. I mean, I'll go through these with you and I'll point out a few things, but most of the things are fairly obvious. They're the things that we've seen in our lives and we know these to be true. And what he's going to be doing here in Proverbs 10 is making a contrast between the righteous and the wicked, between the wise and the foolish. And you'll see these contrasts from line to line. Now, in chapters 1 through 9, he's been speaking in somewhat of a dialogue, but now he's going to change. Each verse is going to be a little bit different from the other. And this is what we usually think of when we think of Proverbs, is what we see here in chapter 10, these short statements that have this compacted meaning. And so this gives us that real strong impact here. And this is what we begin seeing here in Proverbs. So let's begin looking at this. The Proverbs of Solomon. I think he's kind of indicating by that phrase there's going to be a little bit of a different look, a little bit a change in the way he's writing. A wise son makes a father glad, but a foolish son is a grief to his mother. Stop to think about that for a minute. I was thinking, do fathers and mothers react differently to the behavior of their children? I'm not too sure that's true. I think he's just making a contrast here. You know, parents are so proud of their kids when they make good decisions. And we're not talking about a pride because our kids are smart, they have great intellect, they get good grades. We're not talking about they're beautiful, they're good-looking kids. We're not talking about their athletic prowess. We're not talking about those types of things. What we're talking about is our kids have made good decisions in life and how proud we are of that. And yet, in contrast, what a grief it is to parents when their kids make poor decisions. And what he's saying here is, son, it's going to make a difference in your life. It's also going to make a difference in your parents' life. They're going to be either really proud of you, or it's just going to bring a tremendous amount of grief and pain to have a parent crying during the night because of the decisions their children have made. Is just a terrible, sad situation. And he's telling us that at the beginning. And notice he makes a contrast between the wise son and the foolish son. And this is what we're going to be doing in each line. Verse 2, ill-gotten gains do not profit, but righteousness delivers from death. The Lord will not allow the righteous to hunger, but he will reject the cravings of the wicked. Poor is he who works with a negligent hand, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. He who gathers in summer is a son who acts wisely, but he who sleeps in harvest is a son who acts shamefully. Now, he's changed direction in these past few verses. He's talking about a work ethic now. He's talking about the way we should look at work. Ill-gotten gains doesn't profit anything. Someone said crime doesn't pay, but you can't beat the hours. Well, it doesn't pay. And that's what he's saying. In the long term, nothing pays off except for hard work. And he makes this contrast between the righteous and the wicked, between the negligent hand and the diligent hand. The guy who is sleeping when he should be working. And we're introduced to the sluggard back in chapter 6. Remember the sluggard? He says, go to the ant, sluggard, and learn its ways. Learn how to be a good worker. Stop being so lazy. There's a lot of ways that people can be lazy. Not just on their job, but you can ask your children, what ways can you be lazy? Oh, yeah, they can be lazy at school. You could be lazy as a student of the Bible. You can be spiritually lazy. In fact, the Hebrew writer addresses this in Hebrews chapter 6. Note here, Hebrews chapter 6. verses 11 and 12. And we desire that each one of you show the same diligence so as to realize the full assurance of hope until the end, so that you will not be sluggish, but imitators of those who through faith and patience inherit the promises. I want you to be diligent spiritually, not be sluggish. So many people can be sluggish in their Bible study, in their prayer time, in their worship of God. It's easy to be a sluggard, to be lazy. Charles Spurgeon, I wrote down a quote by him. He says, "An idle man makes himself a target for the devil, and the devil is an uncommonly good shot." When you're lazy, you just open yourself up to the devil, is what he's saying. Another quotation here by John Wesley, and this is an interesting quotation. He says, "Why are not more holy?" And he answers this question, "Chiefly because we are enthusiasts looking for the end without the means." We want the results, but we don't want to put in the effort. One thing that's often bothered me within the church are those that I call instant scholars. They've not put the time into Bible study, but they have all the answers. They'll shout out the answers, and it might be just political correctness that they're crying out, but they think they have all, but they haven't really studied the Bible. They're just instant scholars, and it's troublesome when we see people who have been lazy spiritually, and it causes so much trouble within the church. Hosea said, my people perish for a lack of understanding." We need to be people who are diligent in our spiritual life, and in our social life, and in our physical life too, when we go to our works. And so Solomon is addressing those things. Verse 6, "Blessings are on the head of the righteous, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. The memory of the righteous is blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot. The wise heart will receive commands, but a babbling fool will be ruined. He who walks in integrity walks securely, but he who perverts his ways will be found out. He who winks the eye causes trouble, and a babbling fool will be ruined." Notice here, the end of verse 8 and the end of verse 10 are exactly the same thing. A babbling fool will be ruined. And he's talking about the way we are talking. He began talking about the mouths of the wicked, the blessings that are on the head of the righteous, but the mouth of the wicked, it causes some troubles here. And what gets us in trouble more quickly than our tongue? The things that we say. And so he's addressing this and talking to his son. No, don't be a babbling fool who just talks all the time and never says anything. Then he goes in verse 11, "The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence." The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life. Now, the Hebrew literally says a vein of life. The idea of the aorta, that vein of life, that heart that pumps blood throughout the body. And this righteous person, he brings life to everything around him. He's like a fountain of life. And because of the things he says, he brings goodness to people. But the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. He covers up his intentions. He's always deceptive. And then he continues, "Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all transgressions." Hatred stirs up strife. There are those who are always trying to stir up trouble. They are looking for faults. They're looking for something that they can cause trouble with. They delight in feuds. They look to stir things up. But love covers things, so there won't be this problem. They throw oil on a fire, that's hateful. Throw water on a fire, that's love. James wrote about those who turn a brother back from the error of his ways, covers a multitude of sin. Love covers a multitude of sins. It's able to turn people back and cover transgressions. It's not always looking for faults, and that's what James tells us as well. Don't be judgmental. Stop looking at other people's faults. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all transgressions. On the lips, we're still talking about our tongue here. On the lips of the discerning, a wisdom is found. But a rod is for the back of him who lacks understanding. The way the wise talk, it shows discernment. But the only way he learns is by the rod, by the hard way, the rough way. The rod is a very painful way to have to learn in life. Wise men store up knowledge, but with the mouth of the foolish, ruin is at hand. The rich man's wealth is his fortress. The ruin of the poor is their poverty. The rich man's wealth is his fortress. He relies on his wealth. The poor man is ruined by their poverty. There's nothing to lean back on. I wonder sometimes you're looking at this, you wonder, is it that the rich get richer by the oppression and labor of the poor? Or is he just talking about the way that wisdom can bring you wealth that you can rely on? It'll give you that strong work ethic. Very interesting statement. And Jesus had a lot to say about the rich and the poor. It is hard for the poor, and it seems easier for the wealthy. And he's talking about, in the Old Testament and the New Testament, have a good work ethic. Have good stewardship of what God has given you. Don't use it foolishly. The wages of the righteous is life. The income of the wicked, punishment. So the wages of the righteous is life. For the wicked, though, it's just punishment. And the idea of stewardship here. They both have the same amount, but the poor seems to get it. The foolish seems to spend their wages on excess food, excess drink, excesses of all sorts. And they don't think about that they're going to need to make investment, and they're not going to need to use this money later on. And so the income of the wicked is punishment. He is on the path of life who heeds instruction, but he who ignores reproof goes astray. He who conceals hatred has lying lips, and he who spreads slander is a fool. Still talking about our tongues, right? You can conceal hatred with lying lips. That brown noser, that guy who's, he butters you up, but he doesn't really like you. And he spreads slander. He's a gossip. That guy's a fool. He said, watch out the way you talk and the way you treat other people. And when there are many words, transgression is unavoidable, but he who restrains his lips is wise. Haven't we learned that? By practice. If you talk too much, you're going to end up with some trouble. And the guy who restrains his lips, to be quiet is to be taken as a fool. And to open your mouth is to remove all doubt of how foolish you are. Sometimes you can look wiser by just not spouting off everything you think you might know. And Solomon is warning his son here. And so he's been emphasizing this idea of the tongue, and he's going to continue. The tongue of the righteous is as choice silver. The heart of the wicked is worth little. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for lack of understanding. It is the blessing of the Lord that makes rich, and he adds no sorrow to it. Every good and perfect gift comes from above. We're all recipients of God's great mercy and God's great blessing. And what God wants us to do is use our opportunities. He wants us to use our jobs. He wants us to use our money in a wise way and not in foolishness. And he's talking about that. And so the blessing of the Lord, that makes rich. And he says, doing wickedness is like sport to a fool, and so is wisdom to a man of understanding. Wickedness is like sport to a fool. He enjoys it. He pursues it. If you love sports, man, you're pursuing your sports. When's the next football game going to be? And he says that's the way the fool is. He's just looking, what can I do now? What's the next wicked thing I can do? And but wisdom is not like that. He is a man of understanding. And this contrast again between a fool and understanding, wickedness and wisdom is being seen. What the wicked fears will come upon him, but the desire of the righteous will be granted. What the wicked fears. You know what the wicked fears the most is he's going to get caught. He's got that guilt. He's always looking over his shoulder. And it says what he's fearing, it's going to come down on him. He's going to be caught eventually. It's going to come to him. But the desire of the righteous will be granted. When the whirlwind passes, the wicked is no more, but the righteous has an everlasting foundation. Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the lazy one to those who send him. We just looked at that a moment ago. The fear of the Lord prolongs life, but the years of the wicked will be shortened. The hope of the righteous is gladness, but the expectation of the wicked perishes. The way of the Lord is a stronghold to the upright, but ruin to the workers of iniquity. The righteous will never be shaken, but the wicked will not dwell in the land. The mouth of the righteous flows with wisdom, but the perverted tongue will be cut out. Ouch. But the lips of the righteous bring forth what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked, what is perverted. Comes back to the tongue again and the way we speak. Now, I think the way the Proverbs have been written to us, I think the expectation is that you read each one and stop and pause and think about it and meditate it. You know, we just read through the chapter, and I'm sure there's nothing wrong with that, but I think when we're reading it alone, we need to look at these and just stop and pause and ask ourselves some questions about each one of these passages and think about them. I mean, which one of these is most needed today? Any of these strike a chord within you? What topics has he been talking about? I mean, a couple of topics are pretty obvious, I think. Having a good work ethic, our tongue, and the constant contrast between the wicked and the righteous, the constant contrast between the wise and the foolish. I think we need to just stop and pause and think about each one of these things as we go through Proverbs. So much richness here. General statements. These are just general characteristics of life. These are not necessarily laws or commands to live by. They're general principles. And when we look at these general principles, you know, this is the way to live. This is the way to go. Seeing the decision you make now is going to make a difference in the future. And that's what wisdom is all about. Well, thank you for joining me in the 10th chapter of Proverbs. I'll be joining you again next week as we open the book of Proverbs once again.